So earlier this year, I published a book and I called it How to Deal with Asian Parents. And came a flurry of questions, and really it's my opportunity to share some strategies that's worked for me in improving my relationship with my parents. But you get questions, right? Because you call your book How to Deal with Asian Parents. There's a lot of assumptions and connotations and that are associated with that title when you call it that. Some people laughed. They're like, deal with it. Yeah, exactly. That's how you should call it. But the title of the book assumes that it provides the reader with a clear, cookie cutter solution to their problems. But with any self-help, personal development, transformation advice, relationship advice book, the solution really lies within us. You can read a book, but it's not until you actually do something about it that you can actually get some strides in making something work. So the book serves as a catalyst, really, to provide the reader with the courage and it's the validation. Because what my hopes is that those stories will resonate with my readers and empower them to do something, right? Whether it's to start a conversation with their parents or actually learn to accept their past or their childhood or embrace their culture. Whatever it is that they need to do, it's more of an empowerment piece and an opportunity to share my stories and for you to feel like you belong, right? That these experiences that you had growing up you're not the only one who's experienced it, that there is a collective there for you to lean into. And the book gives tools and strategies, tips, coping mechanisms, but at the end of the day, it's up to the person reading it to do something, right? And to follow suit. But here are some questions, there's 4 questions here that I've been asked, and I'll just kind of go through what they've asked and then my answer to them. So first question, hey Catherine, this is a long question. I saw your Someone Sleeve post on Asian Hustle Network, AHN, and wanted to reach out since your message about Asian parents resonates with me a lot. I think all third culture kids feel the generational and cultural differences to a certain extent, but I only recently started to realize that I'm not okay with how my parents and I communicate with each other and how not so great our relationships are with each other. Wanting to make it better, I tried Googling some resources, but not much came up. So I was starting to feel a bit, bit disappointed in this attempt until I saw your post. I'm wondering, since you started your blog and reaching an audience, is there a lot of other people who feel this way about their relationship with their parents and that they actually want to improve it? Have you heard back from readers how the parents reacted when they tried to have heart-to-heart conversations and talk about how they feel? I recently posted this, and most responses came back with, they can't be helped, just nod and smile or sweep it under the rug. Not very hopeful to see that that's how the majority of people interact with their problems. Looking forward to hearing what your thoughts and findings have been. So really great questions. In my experiences talking to a bunch of people, there are many folks who share these same struggles. Some have accepted the relationship as is and are content with how it is. There's content with the way things are. And they found a happy medium that works for them, right? It's kind of just okay, I tried, I'm good, I'm at peace with what I have so far. I'm at peace. Others want to do something and they tried, but it's just they just don't want to try anymore. So it's not really acceptance, it's just kind of giving up. And then there's some who have cut ties. And then again, this is not a decision to be taken lightly, to cut ties with your parents, especially when, our values, I'm going to assume a lot of our values are family-based. But a lot of the people who have cut ties with their parents, perhaps they were in an abusive situation, or they're just not supportive, and whenever they were around them, it just became toxic, and it was more harm than good for them. It's what worked for them. So my own kind of personal experience, so these are kind of the 3 groups of people that I've met, for people that just kind of have found a happy medium, and then people who've tried and they just don't even want to try anymore, they'll just deal with it whenever they have to deal with it, and then the ones that have cut ties. Personally, there are days where my parents and I actually have really good conversations, are joking, sharing, reminiscing, thinking about the past, things that they did, and then them being being okay being the butt of the joke, right? And making real great strides in our relationship. And then there are other days where they'll say something that really pinches my values, and I just start giving them attitude, or start questioning and being really defensive, and I don't feel like talking to them again. I mean, just the other day, I was talking about, I was going to be on this TV show. So I just recently filmed something with Fairchild TV, and it's actually a show that they watch, right? Like I told them, like, oh, here's, this is what I'm going to be on. And like my mom's like, oh, great. Like my mom's a little bit more supportive and emotionally intelligent than my dad. But my dad's like, how much you get to pay? How much you get? And I'm like, Dad, it's not about that, right? Like, it's about the opportunity to share my story. But of course that pinched me, and I go right into defense, and I said, why do you say that? Like, this is what's wrong with Asian parents, is that you don't emotionally validate us. And then of course he goes into like, what are you talking about? Fine, I won't talk to you ever again. Like, I won't bring it up. It's just the way it is. So you get those moments too, right? And then there are other moments that are good. And to be honest, there isn't really a clear solution to the disconnect, and the book doesn't. It's not like it's honestly a fairy tale ending that that you're gonna get after reading the books. You're just like, oh my god, I know exactly. Well, I'm gonna do something about it now, and it's just this really great happy ending. It's really more about finding common ground with our parents so that the relationship is less strained. And you have a little bit more of a peaceful interactions, like your social interactions aren't as triggering. And a lot of it's like our own journey towards ourselves, like learning more about ourselves and embracing our past. And really in embracing our culture and where we came from, and appreciating the roots that you have. Because once you reflect on the past and be able to connect the dots, so you can kind of create the future that you want and be able to control your destiny and not be held back with these self-limiting beliefs or any sort of things that they've kind of imprinted in your head, in your mind of who you are, and being able to break through that. And I'm a realistic optimist. Like I believe in making do with what we've got. And the bottom line is that like people don't change like when you ask them to, right? Like you can ask someone to be cleaner, you can ask them to be more hardworking, you can you want these people to change, or you can ask them to be more empathetic, you can ask them to, like, why can't you be like this? But they don't change when you ask them, they change on their own. And our parents, it's the same thing, right? You can ask them to be nicer to you, you can ask them to stop criticizing you, but you can only do so much. And it's about managing our own expectations and accepting them for who they are, as well as just making an attempt to get to know them so that you can, really empathize with their mindset. When they do say something that triggers you, they have a little bit more context behind why they're saying those things. Okay, that was a long-winded answer. Okay, question number 2. How do your parents feel about you publishing a book about them? I mean, I think they would be embarrassed, but I think it's a great subject and probably an interesting topic. This person's not Asian. I have learned a lot with Asian in-laws in the past 15 years. So my response, like, and then really great question, and thanks so much for asking. My parents aren't embarrassed, okay? Like, they're supportive and encouraging in my pursuit. And it's through many conversations and ongoing communication. Google Translate is like one of my best friends. Lots of patience, a lot of tolerance, a lot of just like holding my tongue, to be able to fully explain what I was trying to achieve, like why I needed to do this. I mean, I wouldn't have written an entire book about my relationship with them if they didn't consent and agree to be part of it. And honestly, like, they appreciate and understand the challenges that their peers, Asian parents, have with their grown kids. Like, themselves have heard stories from their family friends, from their peers, their other family members who have a strained relationship with their grown children. They'll be talking to their family friend or something like that and be like, how's your son, how's your daughter? And they just be like, I don't know, I haven't talked to them for like months, or haven't seen them in months. And they appreciate that, and they think that this book could potentially help. And if you do decide to read the book, it explains how I got there. And of course, like, I get it. Like if you have Asian in-laws, like if you're not Asian and you're married to someone who is Asian, you get some like insight into the relationship, and that's kind of like on the periphery of that. And personally, my own in-laws are Chinese too, so I kind of like get the double-ended sword or whatever. And being a witness to a toxic relationship, if they have a strained relationship, it can be really challenging and frustrating to observe. Especially if your own relationship with your parents is pretty healthy, to observe that disconnect with your spouse and his parents, or her parents, or that it can be really challenging. So my parents are supportive, but in terms of making a living writing this book, they're a little bit more skeptical, right? They're more traditional minded of what a career should look like, and they're kind of old school. I mean, like I did an entire video about like when I told my mom what I made writing last month, they're like, oh my God, that's not even enough for groceries. And I mentioned earlier, like my dad, like, saying that in the money comment about how like, oh, you are on TV, well, how much did they pay you? Like that kind of stuff. So they're supportive, but like, in their own way. I know they're proud. They may not voice it in the way that I want them to voice it, but deep down inside, they're good people and they're not embarrassed. Okay, third question. I'm asking some of my friends how they deal with their parents, and so far a lot of them have told me they don't bother because they know that their parents won't change. Kind of sad to hear, really. Do you think that's the majority of people? They want to have a better relationship with their parents, but they know it's a futile effort. I think really depends on the life stage your friends are at. Like, if they are married, I don't know if they have kids, or if they're married or separated or whatever, right? Like, but I find when people start a new life stage, that's when they kind of start to self-reflect on their life, their childhood, because weddings involve family. And if you're Asian, like it can get really chaotic and complicated, because you gotta figure out who to invite, who not to invite, who's gonna get offended, who's not gonna get offended, what kind of traditions you want to follow, what kind of traditions you want to nix. So you kind of start to think about family, and then mainly, of course, your parents. Having children, like when you become a parent, you also think about your own childhood, because you're raising this child. It's a baby. You think about their future. You think about when they become a teenager, and then you start thinking about your own childhood, how you were as a teenager with your own kids. And of course, and divorces, separations makes folks lean on loved ones. And so during these life changes, I think people tend to start thinking about their parents and their relationship with them, as well. And of course, growing up watching your parents interact, it also shapes how you are with your spouse. And I think maybe a lot of people feel that their efforts are futile is kind of like, it has to do with their own self-improvement journey and loving themselves and embracing where they came from, and less about wanting their parents to change. Like understanding that makes those interactions a lot more tolerable with our parents. And of course the frequency matters, right? If you see your parents every day or you live with them, then that frustration is going to be really it's going to be really heightened. And you may be more triggered to work on it, or you may be more triggered to just like cut ties too. And of course, like if you only see them once a year and it's pretty tolerable, then you're like, why do I need to work on something doesn't really have like a big impact on my day-to-day life? So I'm don't really want to work on it. Okay, question 4. So the title is called How to Deal with Your Asian Parents, right? So the one, I guess, cheekily asked, what if I don't want to deal with them at all? And like, honestly, that's totally fine. Like, I mean, if you've come to accept them for who they are and you're content with the relationship you currently have with them, you have no desire to change, you have no regrets by the time they, comes where they have to leave Earth, or if you have to leave Earth, then you have no reason to work on a relationship, then you don't have to deal with them. Like, it's like, why work on a problem when you don't think you have one? And like, if you do decide to buy the book for shits and giggles, the first chapter actually delves into why, as in, why do you want to work on the relationship in the first place? And why do you want it to improve? Why is the relationship with your parents important? And how would you want it to change? Like, what is your ideal situation? And then once you get through that first chapter and you go through that guided self-reflection exercise that provides, with a clear understanding of where you stand, you kind of have an idea of where you are at. And the book helps to validate the reader in what they want, right? Sometimes in relationship development, the toughest part is figuring out what you want and knowing whether you want to put effort into it, right? Like, because it's kind of like you have relationships with all these people in your life. You have parents, you've got your siblings, you've got friends, or whatever. But it's like, what do you want out of it? Like, what is it that you ultimately are hoping to get? And if you, in the conclusion, if you decide, if it comes to after the reflection that you realize I had no desire to work on it, then that's an insight that you have for yourself. That you could acknowledge and make peace with. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are of your own experiences. If you have Asian parents, have you tried to work on it yourself? If you have tried, what has been your experience? If it's, like, have you cut ties with your parents? Has it been the good thing? Or are you thinking of rekindling that relationship? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments, as well as any other questions you have for my book.